What if the god of thunder was the one who fell into a trap? Thor stood at the edge of the battlefield, Mjolnir crackling in his grip, watching a distant alien fleet move silently through the stars. They called themselves the Void Syndicate, a ruthless alien gang feared across galaxies, known for dismantling entire civilizations. They had no gods, no kings, only destruction. And now they were coming for Asgard. But Thor wasn't going to wait. Fueled by rage and guilt from past failures, he launched a solo assault on their command ship, thinking speed and surprise would win the war. He thought he'd crush them before they touched his people. He thought wrong. What he didn't know, the Syndicate had been watching him for weeks, tracking him, studying his patterns. The moment he stepped aboard their ship, the doors sealed behind him, not with fear, but with precision. They didn't flinch. They smiled. For the first time, Thor wasn't the hunter. He was the prey. The skies above Asgard were darker than usual. Not with clouds, not with storm. Thor knew those intimately. This was different. A silence before an unknown storm. He stood on the balcony of the All-Father's tower, his hand gripping Mjolnir just tight enough to crack the edge of the stone railing. Below, Asgardians moved through the city unaware of what was coming, laughing, living, trusting their god of thunder to keep them safe. He wasn't so sure he could this time. The messages started as whispers in the universe, scattered distress signals from forgotten realms, floating wreckage from planetary systems no one dared approach, civilizations erased without a sound. The Void Syndicate was a name spoken like a curse among intergalactic travelers. An alien gang so brutal they didn't conquer, they erased. No survivors, no warning, just silence. And now they were headed for Asgard. Thor didn't wait for Odin's vision or Valkyrie's strategy. There was no time. The only thing standing between his people and extinction was action. He called for his goat-drawn ship and took off alone. Stars blurred into streaks of light as he crossed galaxies and hours, tracking the Syndicate's last known coordinates. A single asteroid field in the shadow of a dying star. It looked empty, too empty. He hovered above, scanning. The readings were all wrong. Energy signatures pulsing from inside rock formations. Then came the sound, low, metallic humming. Not a sound you hear, but feel in your bones. And then the sky cracked open. From within the asteroid belt emerged a ship unlike any he had seen, wide as a planet, smooth as obsidian, lit by veins of red plasma. It didn't fly. It glided, alive, watching. Thor didn't hesitate. He summoned the storm, charged his body with lightning, and launched straight into the beast. The hull didn't resist. It let him in. Inside it was too quiet. The walls pulsed like flesh, and yet the ship felt ancient. No guards, no defenses, just a long corridor lit by an eerie violet glow. He walked forward, Mjolnir humming beside him. Then, without warning, the door behind him sealed shut. Another door opened ahead. Inside stood 5 beings cloaked in void black armor. No faces, no eyes, just the symbol of the Syndicate glowing on their chests. A circle split by a jagged line, representing balance, destroyed. "You came alone," one of them said. Its voice echoed like 10 voices stacked together. "I came to end you," Thor growled. "You came exactly as we planned." Before he could move, the walls came alive. Tendrils shot out, wrapping around his arms, legs, throat. Mjolnir flew from his hand and was absorbed into the wall, like water into sand. Thor screamed with rage, lightning bursting from every inch of him. But nothing happened. The ship absorbed his power like it was feeding on it. For every bolt he summoned, the walls pulsed brighter. "You don't understand," the alien voice hissed. "We've been watching you. The god who acts before he thinks. The hero with a temper. You're not the savior of Asgard. You're its doom." With a flash, everything went black. When Thor opened his eyes, he was on Asgard. But it wasn't the Asgard he left behind. The skies were burning. Buildings crumbled. People screamed. Alien ships hovered in every direction, and Syndicate soldiers marched through the streets like they owned them. And Thor? He was in chains, dragged through his own golden city like a prisoner of war. He struggled, roared, tried to summon Mjolnir, but nothing. The hammer didn't come. It was still part of the ship, still absorbed. The people watched him, not with hope, not with fear, with disappointment. "You promised to protect us," an old woman whispered. "You brought them here," a child said. He fell to his knees. The leader of the syndicate walked forward, removing its helmet. Its face was half machine, half alien. Cold eyes stared down at him. "You made it easy," it said. "We needed you out of the way, so we used your pride." They didn't invade Asgard while Thor was away. They lured him away to invade Asgard. They knew he'd come alone, knew he wouldn't wait for backup, knew he'd fall into their trap if they just played into his rage. He had walked into their jaws with lightning in his fists, and now Asgard was burning because of it. Thor let out a roar so loud it cracked stone, but nothing changed. The alien leader raised a staff. "Let all witness the fall of gods." A beam of red light shot into the sky, and a new symbol appeared above Asgard. The broken circle, the sign of the syndicate. The god of thunder had fallen, not in battle, but in arrogance. And the real war was just beginning. Ashes floated through the Asgardian sky like snow. Thor sat in a high-tech containment cell, glowing with runes he didn't recognize. It wasn't just magic. It wasn't just science. It was something beyond both. A fusion designed specifically to hold gods. And it worked. He had screamed. He had struck the walls until his fists bled, even though he wasn't supposed to bleed. But the cell didn't move. It didn't respond, like it was laughing silently at his weakness. Across from him, beyond the shimmering barrier, stood the syndicate's leader again. Calm, mechanical, confident. "You're not the first god we've broken," it said, "but you are the loudest." Thor stared, breath heavy, wrists bruised from pulling at chains. "You want a war? You'll get one. The 9 realms will rise." The alien tilted its head. "We've already taken 5 of them." A silence crushed the space between them. Vanaheim fell yesterday. No one left to rise. Thor looked away, jaw clenched. He could feel something inside him cracking. Not bone. Something worse. Doubt. "They believed in you," the alien whispered. "They followed you, and you led them to fire." "You'll pay," Thor said, but the words felt small now, lighter than they used to be. "No, we already did. That's why we built this plan. And now you'll watch your world rebuild, without you." It turned and walked away, the cell going dark. Thor was left alone with his thoughts, for the first time in what felt like eternity. He tried again, summoned Mjolnir. Nothing, not even a flicker. The hammer was gone, or worse, alive inside something else. Corrupted. Thor closed his eyes. In the silence, he thought he heard something. A voice. Distant. Familiar. He opened his eyes and looked around. No one. But the cell's walls began to ripple, like water touched by wind. The air shifted. Cold. Sharp. Electric. Then, a shadow stepped through the cell wall like it wasn't there. It wasn't a syndicate soldier. It wasn't anyone he knew. It was her. A woman made of starlight and shadow. Her eyes burning white. Her armor pulsing with cosmic energy. She didn't walk. She floated slightly above the ground, like gravity didn't apply. "You're not real," Thor muttered. She tilted her head. "Neither is your idea of yourself." He stood slowly. "Who are you?" She stepped closer. The one thing even they're afraid of. The walls flickered. Alarms blared in the distance. "They found you," Thor said. "They always do," she replied. The cell shattered. Just like that. As if it was never really there. Thor stumbled forward, unshackled, blinking. He should have felt power rush back in, but it didn't. He was still weak. "Why help me?" he asked. "Because you're not done," she said. "But if you don't change, you will be." The alarms grew louder. Syndicate soldiers stormed the corridor. The woman raised one hand, and time stopped. Literally, everything froze, except Thor. "What are you?" he whispered. A question. One only you can answer. She turned and walked into the frozen hallway. "Come." He followed. confused, unstable, but moving. They passed frozen soldiers mid-sprint, blasts of plasma locked in mid-air like hanging stars. The woman moved like she'd done this 1,000 times. Like time didn't dare move without her permission. Thor's mind raced. This was impossible, beyond even the most ancient Asgardian magic. "Why me?" he asked again. She stopped. "You think this is about your hammer? Your pride? The people you lost?" "No, Thor. This is about something much bigger. The Syndicate isn't an army. It's a warning. A warning of what? Of what happens when gods believe they're untouchable." She waved her hand, and suddenly they weren't on the ship anymore. They stood in a realm Thor didn't recognize, floating rocks in endless space, burning stars colliding in the distance. It was silent and alive all at once. "Where are we?" he breathed. "The place between cause and consequence," she said. "Time doesn't reach here, but echoes do." And then he saw them, visions, flickering all around him. Asgard, burning, Earth, drowning, a shadow version of him, eyes glowing red, leading the Syndicate instead of fighting them. "What is this?" "Every path you might walk if you don't change," she said. "You think this is about strength, that if you just hit hard enough, everything breaks. But power without clarity is chaos. And you, Thor Odinson, are chaos wrapped in thunder." He turned toward her, furious. "You don't know me. I know what you could be, and what you'll become if you keep chasing glory instead of truth." He dropped to his knees. "I've already failed." "Then stop failing. Rise." She offered her hand. For a moment, Thor didn't move. Then he took it. Instantly, the visions shattered. They were back on the ship. Time snapped back into motion, and Thor changed. Not stronger, not angrier, just clearer. The alarms were screaming. The Syndicate's core was shaking. The mysterious woman was gone, but something of her remained within him. He walked down the corridor, barefoot, weaponless. And yet everything in his path moved. Not out of fear, out of recognition. He wasn't just a god now. He was becoming something else. Something the Syndicate wasn't ready for. The ship shook as if it sensed something had gone terribly wrong. Doors slid open before Thor could touch them. Lights flickered as he passed. He wasn't running. He wasn't shouting. He just walked, with a kind of silence that made every step feel louder than thunder. Syndicate soldiers blocked his path, weapons raised, formation locked. But they hesitated. He had no hammer, no armor, no lightning swirling around him. Just bare hands, calm breath, and a presence that cracked the air itself. The first soldier stepped forward. Thor didn't blink. The soldier fired. The blast reached him and vanished inches from his chest, dissolved into sparks. Thor raised one hand slowly, not in defense, in understanding, and then they all flew backwards, slammed into walls like rag dolls, as if the ship itself turned against them. He didn't touch them. He didn't need to. Whatever the woman had awakened, it wasn't just power. It was control over himself, over the storm, over everything. Deep below the ship's command deck, alarms screamed louder. The Syndicate's leaders were scrambling now. This wasn't the Thor they had trapped. This wasn't the blind god who charged alone into death. This was something new. They activated containment fields, weapons meant to pierce planetary cores, gravity cages, quantum disruptors. None of it mattered. Thor stepped into the armory chamber, where Mjolnir had been absorbed. A massive pillar pulsed with divine energy, corrupted and restrained, like his hammer was buried alive in metal. He placed his palm on it and whispered, "I see now." The metal cracked, not from rage, but resonance. Mjolnir exploded out in a wave of raw power, ripping through the structure, and hovered before him, different now, sharper. Black veins ran through it like the storm itself had evolved. He reached for it, and it came, not as a weapon, as an extension of him. He turned, eyes glowing with focused lightning. This time, he chose the storm, and it answered. He shot through the ship like a god reborn, Mjolnir tearing open walls, shields, everything in its path. Syndicate ships docked nearby were torn apart by shockwaves before they even took flight. He wasn't just fighting, he was liberating. Room by room, cell by cell, he shattered prisons filled with beings the Syndicate had captured, warriors, gods, creatures from galaxies forgotten. And as he freed them, they didn't flee. They joined him. A winged giant from Zarin 5, a hive queen with burning eyes, a shapeshifter who wore stars as skin. Dozens, then hundreds, followed him through the broken ship like the rise of a forgotten army. The Syndicate's core chamber finally opened. The leaders stood there, armored and confident, backed by ancient AI and void cannons designed to rewrite matter. "You are too late," the leader hissed. "We've seen every future. You always fall." Thor stepped forward, lightning coiling around him like a cloak. "Then I'll make a future you didn't plan for." They fired everything, and Thor didn't dodge. He walked through beams that could slice moons, through anti-god tech that rewrote molecules. It passed through him like wind. Then he struck. One swing of Mjolnir shattered the command deck, not just physically, spiritually. The air screamed. The ship itself wailed in pain. The AI collapsed. The systems crashed. The leaders fell back, shielding themselves. "You don't understand," one of them shouted. "If you destroy this ship, you destroy the seal. You'll release what we've been holding back." Thor paused. "The seal? We were never the greatest threat. We were guarding something worse. We just didn't tell anyone." Lies or truth? The ship trembled deeper this time. Cracks spread across the stars outside the windows. A pulse echoed through the universe. Something had awakened. Something ancient. Thor stepped back, breath steady, eyes narrowing. "What did you do?" he asked. The leader collapsed to its knees. "We didn't lie. We just didn't explain. You think we were invading, but we were culling, containing the ones touched by it." The wall behind them tore open, not with weapons, with darkness, not blackness, void, living, breathing void. Thor stared into it, and it stared back. Something cold smiled from beyond the crack, and whispered his name, not aloud. Inside him, Thor turned to the freed prisoners, to his new allies. "This changes nothing," he said. "We fight anyway." But he knew it wasn't true. Everything had changed. The real enemy wasn't the Syndicate. It was what they were afraid of. And now, it was awake. The crack in space widened like a wound. It didn't bleed light. It bled absence. A swirling void that devoured not just stars, but memory, time, and meaning. Thor stood at its edge, Mjolnir pulsing in his grip, while the remnants of the Syndicate crawled backward like insects in a flood. They weren't warriors anymore. They were survivors of something they couldn't control. The whisper from the void returned, stronger this time. "God of Thunder. Do you hear it now?" It wasn't just a voice. It was inside everything. The walls, the light, even his breath. Thor turned to the Syndicate leader, who now trembled on the ground like a man facing judgment. "You lied," Thor growled. "We contained it," the alien said. "We built the Syndicate to stop this, to seal it, to feed it just enough war to keep it dormant. But you broke the balance." A shadow moved within the crack. Not a shape, not even a being, just the idea of something far too big to exist. "Let me guess," Thor said coldly. "Now I have to stop what I accidentally unleashed." The leader coughed. "You can't stop it." "Then I'll face it." Behind him, the freed prisoners were gathering. Some prepared weapons. Some prayed. Some simply watched, frozen by awe and terror. Thor looked at them, his accidental army. Aliens and outlaws, gods and rebels. A force held together by nothing but survival. He raised his voice. "This is not the war we came for." They listened. "This is bigger than syndicates, bigger than thrones. That thing, whatever it is, feeds on chaos, fear, power, everything we are." He paused, letting the silence burn. "But maybe for once we stop feeding it." Something ancient screamed from beyond the rift, twisting the space around it. Time cracked. Ships shattered into dust midair. A 1,000-year-old planet visible through the window aged and died in seconds. Then the void moved forward. Not fast, just inevitable. Thor spun Mjolnir once, and lightning danced across the remains of the ship. But this wasn't lightning versus steel anymore. This was myth versus madness. He charged, not to kill, to protect. Mjolnir collided with the edge of the rift and was absorbed, pulled in like water into a black hole. Thor's body followed. The others screamed. The syndicate leader tried to run. The ship itself began collapsing, and Thor crossed the boundary. The universe vanished. There was no space, no direction, no time, only presence. It pressed against his chest, his mind, his soul. It showed him things, futures, past lives, alternate versions of himself. In one, he ruled Asgard with blood. In another, he burned Earth as a god king. In one, he knelt before the void. But in none did he win. You are chaos in armor, the voice whispered. You destroy to protect. You hurt to save. You scream and call it thunder. Thor tried to summon Mjolnir again, but here it had no meaning. He wasn't a god here, just a soul stripped raw. I've killed gods, the voice said. I've ended stars, and yet you think you're different. Thor didn't speak. He listened, and then softly he laughed. You talk too much, he said. The void pulsed, angry, curious. Thor stood, broken and burning, but still there. That's your mistake, he said. You show visions of fear, failure. You think that breaks me? He stepped forward, his body reforming with every thought. But I've already failed. I've lost. I've bled. I've watched worlds die, and I'm still standing. A flicker of lightning sparked in his palm. Real. His memory of Mjolnir, of worth, reshaped itself in this place of nothing. He didn't summon the hammer. He became it. I'm not here to win, Thor said. I'm here to fight. He charged again, and the void flinched. Back on the ship, the rift began to pulse uncontrollably. The warriors outside watched it twist, shrink, recoil. And then Thor emerged, not thrown, walking out. His eyes were white fire. His armor burned like stardust. And behind him, the void screamed as the cracks sealed shut, like a wound finally closed. He had carried its weight and survived. Thor collapsed to his knees. The others ran to him. He looked up, tired but smiling. It's quiet now, he whispered. The syndicate? Leaderless, disarmed. The prisoners? Free. But more importantly, so was he. The real battle wasn't against the void. It was inside him all along. Silence spread across the battlefield like fog. No more alarms. No more blasts. No more screams. Just the low hum of the stars returning to their rhythm, like the universe had been holding its breath, and finally exhaled. Thor stood at the center of the ruin. Around him, broken parts of the syndicate fleet floated in space, their glowing red symbols flickering and fading out, one by one. Soldiers had dropped their weapons. Some knelt. Some vanished into portals. Others just stared at him. He wasn't just Thor now. He had stepped into the void and come back not with more power, but with something rare among gods. Clarity. A warrior queen approached, her wings tattered, face bloodied but proud. You ended it, she said. No, Thor answered, his voice quieter than expected. I just survived it. Another voice broke through the silence. The last syndicate commander, dragged forward in chains. You destroyed everything, the alien hissed. Do you know what's been unleashed now that we're gone? Do you know what you've done? Thor looked at him, not with rage, not with pity, with understanding. You built an empire on fear of the unknown. You fed darkness, hoping it would spare you. You chained stars just to sleep better at night. He stepped closer, Mjolnir at his side. That ends now. The commander spit blood, smiled. Something worse will come. Then I'll be ready, Thor said. But not like before. He looked out into space, at the stars blinking back into place. I won't face it alone. And that's when he made the choice. Thor raised Mjolnir high, not to summon lightning, but to release it. A wave of golden blue energy spread from it in a perfect ring. Not an attack, a call, a signal, to worlds watching from afar, to gods in hiding, to broken warriors and forgotten kings, to anyone who thought the universe had no protectors left. Help would no longer come from a throne. It would rise from the ashes, from choices, from unity. He turned back to the scattered rebels, the freed prisoners, the former enemies, all now waiting for what came next. "You don't owe me loyalty," he said. "I brought war to your doors. I charged into darkness and nearly got us all killed." He held up Mjolnir, but we stood through it. Together, we survived it. And if we build something new, it should be together too. No throne, no empire, just a choice. A silence passed. Then someone stepped forward. Then another. They placed their weapons down, not in surrender, but in agreement. A new pact was forming, not forged in conquest, but in understanding. Later, as the remaining fleet was salvaged and the wounded were tended to, Thor walked through the wreckage of a flagship. His fingers brushed along the cracked walls. Memories echoed through the ship, his own screams, the visions, the whisper of the void. He stopped at the place where it all began, the chamber where he had been chained. It was empty now, but not hollow. He closed his eyes and let go of guilt, of arrogance, of the need to carry it all alone. That version of Thor, impulsive, desperate for glory, blind to consequence, had died in the void. What returned was something else. Not a god of thunder, a guardian of balance. He opened his eyes as someone approached. It was her, the Star Shadow woman from before. No footsteps, no sound, just presence. "You made the right choice," she said. Thor studied her. "You knew what would happen all along." "I knew what could," she replied. "What you would become depended on what you were willing to lose." "And what now?" he asked. "What happens next?" She tilted her head. "That depends on what you build." She reached out, touched Mjolnir. It shimmered, and a second hammer formed in her hand. Not copied, not stolen, reflected. She placed it on the ground between them. "A symbol," she said, "for the next to rise." Thor looked at the new hammer, sleek, lined with stardust, waiting for someone worthy. Not him, someone new. He nodded, and when he looked up, she was gone. He stepped outside again. The stars were brighter now. Hope burned in their place where fear had once ruled. The former syndicate ship, now stripped of weapons, began to shift, repaired, repurposed, transformed. A fleet wasn't always for war. Sometimes it was for watching, for warning, for uniting. Thor knew the war wasn't over. The void still existed, whispering behind the veil of time and space. Something worse might come. That was always true. But next time, the galaxy wouldn't fight blind, and neither would he. He looked up one last time, then walked forward into whatever came next, not as a lone warrior, but as the first of many, the end.